Hi there, my name is Jenny Mills and I am an independent addiction specialist and parent consultant. I work with families just like yours across the country who are trying to make sense out of their son or daughter's relationship with drugs or alcohol and how they can be a part of the solution in knowing how to move forward. So I want to take some time to introduce you to some different topics that may be helpful for you, that might give you an idea about whether you want to learn and know more by working with me as a parent consultant. So let's get started. One of the most challenging subjects that parents are struggling with in this particular day and time is the whole legalization effort with marijuana, both for medicinal purposes and for recreational purposes. It's really hard for parents to know how to respond. Parents are thinking to themselves, well, I may have done that drug in my youth and nothing bad happened to me. Or they may look at legalization efforts. They may also look at the danger factor compared to use of alcohol or the addiction factor compared to other drugs. And so parents are really confused with how to respond. Ironically, even in states where young people know that marijuana has not been legalized, some of them actually conceptualize, well, it's legal after all. And so even though it's not legal in their state, they're inclined to see it as a legal, therefore safe drug to use. Now keep in mind, alcohol is legal for those over 21, and we certainly know that it can be a simple pleasure for some, but poison for others. So in this video, I want to introduce you to the top 10 things that I think are important for you to know and understand about marijuana. First of all, this really is this generation's Budweiser. It's easier to get, it may be cheaper to get, and it is available for purchase in virtually every middle school and high school in America. Number two, THC levels really are stronger. THC is the intoxicating or the impairing part of the marijuana plant that causes a sense of euphoria or helps people get high. And even though there's some debate about how much stronger it is, everybody agrees that the weed that was floating around at Woodstock and the weed that's floating around at Bonnaroo or Burning Man or in your basement is definitely more potent, and that's just bud. While parents tend to think about marijuana as being a green leafy substance, or bud, that's broken up to smoke in joints, blunts, bowls, or bongs, the liquid form of THC really is much stronger. For example, THC levels in urine specimens from those who smoke marijuana regularly may fall between a quantitative analysis of 50 nanograms per milliliter, maybe up to 500 or more, depending on their frequency of use. But those who vaporize or smoke cannabis oil, better known as dabs, wax, extract, or oil, their THC levels in their specimens can be over 1,200 with just a few uses. Getting in trouble for weed is also complicated. Even in states where it's legal, it's not legal for those who are under 21. Almost everywhere, though, getting caught possessing a small amount of marijuana translates to little more than a speeding ticket. On the other hand, it is a drug charge, and that means that it's treated much differently by colleges and financial aid offices than it may be treated by the local law enforcement or judicial system. You see, drug charges generally make a student ineligible for financial aid, regardless of the severity of the offense. The good news is that generally speaking, weed is not in and of itself generally considered a drug that leads to death. There are far more dangerous drugs than marijuana, and frankly, it is less addictive than most. Marijuana falls far down the list from heroin, crack, methamphetamine, or even nicotine, but that doesn't mean that it isn't addictive at all. And it doesn't mean that there are no withdrawal symptoms. Withdrawal when detoxing from marijuana doesn't appear for several days or maybe even for a couple of weeks. For those who develop addiction to marijuana, perhaps the very worst thing that can happen is that tolerance develops to the point where the drug no longer gives the desired effect and the user moves on to something else. Ironically and unfortunately, in this day and time, that often means moving on to opiates in the form of pills. So, to give you a little example, the marijuana user is no longer getting the desired high, and someone says, hey man, take one of these oxys or take this Vicodin, and you'll find that it gives you that same warm, chill out effect. Well, and the first time your son or daughter may take an opioid, it may be swallowing the whole pill. The next time, it may be snorting the crushed pill. At some point down the road, though, those pills get expensive, and that individual may decide instead of snorting the pill form, now they're going to decide to smoke the heroin form because it's so much cheaper. And when they cross that line from opioids in pill form to opioids in heroin form, even if they're snorting it, that's a pretty big game changer. But it's not necessarily as lethal as when they cross the next line to go to IV use. So suddenly, the pill form of opioids provides the bridge for the longtime marijuana user to move into heroin use in a way that suddenly takes this seemingly benign drug called marijuana to a whole new dangerous and potentially deadly state of affairs. The next worst thing that could happen for the chronic marijuana user is that using leads to a psychotic break that may essentially activate schizophrenia-like symptoms. Many people are able to stabilize and not end up not having schizophrenia, yet the delusions, paranoia, and bizarre presentations and behavior that can happen generally increase the likelihood of being in a locked psych ward, and with their care being focused on antipsychotic care instead of focusing on drug use. For some people, though, it's as if marijuana unlocks or activates schizophrenia. We'll never know whether that schizophrenia would have been unlocked or presented itself eventually, but the marijuana use seems to activate it. And perhaps the most common thing that happens with marijuana addiction is that those with that addiction lose many years of their lives by simply being unmotivated, unproductive, and stuck in adolescence. They end up literally losing years of their lives, perhaps continuing to live in their mother's basement until they're 30, 35, or 40 years old. And one day they wake up and they say, what happened with my life? When everybody else was graduating, pursuing a career, finding a mate, having a family, buying a home, and building a life, they were still getting high in their mother's basement playing video games and working a part-time job at the ski shop or the car wash or the local ice cream parlor. What makes me sad is that those who develop marijuana addiction often gravitate to it because it actually helped them manage other symptoms. So they'll need attention in recovery to make sure that symptoms of anxiety, particularly social anxiety, panic disorder, or even generalized anxiety, get attention. They may really need attention to their ADHD or to their depression as a part of their recovery if they're going to sustain an abstinence going forward for a lifestyle of recovery that is symptom-free from those other co-occurring disorders. The truth of the matter is that marijuana recovery really is possible. Marijuana is not an addictive drug for everyone who uses it, just like alcohol is not an addictive drug for everyone who uses it. But we know that the risks are higher for those who start earlier, and that the bottom can be raised and the opportunity to recover a life can happen sooner if recovery happens earlier in the progression process. So this is just a little bit of information about marijuana that may help you as a parent recognize that while it's not the most addictive and it's not the most dangerous, marijuana can develop into addiction and can affect lives in both subtle ways like lack of productivity and lack of motivation, but can also evolve and progress into circumstances that result in the most tragic of circumstances. So certainly as parents, it's important for us to understand and judge our reactions to marijuana use based on having a full slate of information. So I hope the information I've shared with you today is helpful. So some of that information may be completely new news to you. Other parts of it you may have already known. Either way, I think I can be a part of your solution. Below this video, you see a button to click to schedule an appointment to meet with me for a phone consultation. I'd like you to click on that button so that we can set up a time to meet so that I can call you to learn your family's particular story. What services have you already accessed? What was the outcome of those experiences? What have you tried to do to help your son or daughter choose treatment, recovery up to this point? I want to know your story so that I can help ascertain whether we can be a part of your solution going forward. I've worked with literally thousands of families very similar to yours, I expect. And so in that journey of over 25 years, I have come to understand what's typical, what's a little bit outside the norm, and how to work with families in a very individualized way to help guide and direct and consult your process in ways that will help you be a part of the solution for your son or daughter. So I want you to look below, click a time for us to meet, and let's get started. I'm Jenny Mills, an independent addiction specialist and parent consultant ready to work with you and your family. I look forward to meeting you. Take care.